Major Steelers update. Everyone is speaking out about this. The Pittsburgh Steelers are looking to make a major change on offense. As they look to change up their wide receiver and running back room, they could look to make some cuts on offense. My name is Peyton Kleppe. On today's episode of Steelers Digest, we'll be breaking down the latest Pittsburgh Steelers reports and analysis regarding the Pittsburgh Steelers football team. If you guys are not already currently subscribed to the channel, just click that subscribe button down below. We're trying to get to that 2,000 subscribers mark. Like I said, the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking to make a major change on the offensive side of the football. Ari Meyer put out an article today talking about how the Pittsburgh Steelers could look to make a major change at that kick returner spot. Obviously last year made some changes at the kick returner position. Previously, we had guys like Ray McLeod, Gunnar Olszewski, Deontay Johnson. Not too much security back there at that kick returner spot. But obviously, we did bring in Cordell Patterson last year, one of the best kick returners of all time. But just like Aaron Rodgers, we brought him in a little too late. And, we'll have to wait and see what happens with Rodgers. But obviously, Cordell really didn't do much last year in that kick return game. He had a few flashes on offense, stepped up a few times when Najee Harris was tired or hurt, and looked pretty good until he did get a concussion. And, he did miss a significant amount of time last season. And obviously, like I said, he was pretty old for football standards. He is, I believe, 33 or 34. So he's really not a player that you can heavily use on the offensive side of the ball. You can really just throw him back there at kick returner and, maybe throw him on maybe 3 to 5 plays a game on the offensive side of the ball. He's not going to be your starting running back. He's not going to be your starting wide receiver. But, he could play both positions. Coming into the league, I believe Cordell, originally did play wide receiver for the Vikings. I think that was his original team. He was listed at wide receiver, but now obviously since changing a few different teams, obviously going to the Patriots, the Bears, the Falcons, he did kind of change up his position, and he did primarily kind of play running back these past couple years. So, that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers did utilize him last year. But, with his versatility at that running back, wide receiver, kick returner position, he makes up for, 3 roster spots in one. But like I said, he is kind of old and, not very reliable. So going into next year, the Pittsburgh Steelers could look to move on from Cordell Patterson. He does have an undeniable talent, and he was an impressive returner. But the new rules really didn't seem to benefit him nearly as much as the old rules did. And, this experiment's probably going to come to a close soon. I still do believe he has a contract with the team. He is at mandatory minicamp, but we will have to wait and see how long his tenure, continues to be. Like I said, he is a gadget guy. He is a kind of guy like a Connor Heyward, where he can make up for a few different positions on the roster. And, this guy is still one of the best kick returners of all time. So he still could have some success as, he looks to end his career pretty soon. But, he could look to have some more success at that kick returner position. Obviously having 1 year down with those new rules, you learn the game, you learn, different things you can and can't do with the new rules. And, who knows? We throw this guy in preseason, move him around maybe on the offense, throw him at that wide receiver number 2, throw him in at running back, throw him in at kick returner, and, who knows? Maybe he shows up, maybe he doesn't. But I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are still going to wait, until the conclusion of the preseason to make a decision on this guy. I do think they're going to give him a shot this offseason and, let him play in the preseason, let him compete with some of these new young guys we did draft and who could look to sadly take his spot. Ray Filipaldo, obviously infamous Pittsburgh reporter, did say that no doubt they got to do a better job with their kick returns. We've probably seen the last of Cordell Patterson back there. I can't really imagine after last season the Pittsburgh Steelers would want to have him back there again, but they do have some options and they do have a lot of different guys that can return those kicks. Obviously we do have some young guys in Calvin Austin, in Roman Wilson, even Ben Skowronek and, Scotty Miller. We have some young guys that, could, experiment at that kick returner position and, maybe even have an open competition at camp, see what guy is going to step up, see who doesn't. And, guys like Jaylen Warren could even get involved. I've seen the Pittsburgh Steelers even put him back at that kick returner, punt returner position a few different times. He's a very shifty runner. He's obviously a guy that can juke people out, does well in open space, can break a ton of tackles, and, just run past some guys and score the touchdown. That's why the Pittsburgh Steelers elected to keep him and let Najee walk. Coming into the league, Jaylen Warren was a guy who was undrafted. He's been a guy who had to work for his spot, and, he's been a guy that's been open to play wherever the Pittsburgh Steelers want him to play. He's kind of been a rotational guy the past couple years since coming into the league. And like I said, they do throw Jaylen Warren back there at that punt returner, kick returner position a few different times, maybe throughout the season. But, he could look to take a much bigger role this upcoming season. We obviously did also add a guy in Kenneth Gainwell who has had some experience in Philly. He had a few different games for them where he played pretty well. He's kind of a change of pace running back, kind of a backup guy. But, if Coach Tomlin sees fit, he could look to put Kenneth Gainwell maybe back there at the kick returner position. But, obviously I do think we will eventually move on from Cordell Patterson. And I think the most likely candidate who could look to take a spot at that kick returner position, punt returner position, is a guy like Calvin Austin. If you throw it back to maybe 2011, 2012, when Antonio Brown was still a young receiver in the league. Obviously, Antonio Brown has done some dumb stuff, and I don't condone any of that stuff he's done off the field. But if we look at his football career, when he was young, Steelers did put him at that kick returner position. Did have a lot of success, and I don't want to compare a guy like Calvin Austin to Antonio Brown in their football careers. Calvin Austin's still a very young player, but I do think he has a ton of potential, and I do think he's got that explosive ability and that playmaking ability that a guy like Antonio Brown did when he was on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Before Vontaze Burfict ruined his brain and sadly made him into what he is today. And I bring this video to an end, talking about that number 84 jersey. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers will evidently move on from Cordell Patterson once training camp has ended. Unfortunately, that's all I have for you guys tonight on Steelers Digest. If you guys are not already currently subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below. Thank you so much. Here we go, Steelers.